All right, hey there, guys. It's almost time for you to start your discussions for your book clubs. And we wanted to give you the opportunity to hear what these discussions are supposed to look and sound like with an example. So we're going to be using the book, the short story, All Summer in a Day, which we looked at in the last unit. And we're going to be using that for the purposes of today's discussion. We've each selected some of the roles that y'all will be doing for your book clubs, and so we're going to jump right into things. So I was the summarizer, and I've come up with a summary of that reading, and here we go. All Summer in a Day is about a girl from the future who goes to school on Venus. It rains on Venus all day, every day, except for 1 hour every 7 years. The girl, whose name is Margot, has moved to Venus from Earth. This causes a lot of jealousy amongst the other students. They end up locking her in the closet for the entire hour. The story ends when they release her from the closet, but it's too late. It has already started raining again. So that was the summary.
Nice. Thank you for refreshing us so we could all remember what happened in the last reading. So I was passages for rereading, and I picked two that I thought were pretty important for us to kind of go over today. So the first one is from page 1, and it says, all day yesterday they had read in class about the sun, about how like a lemon it was and how hot. And they had written small stories or essays or poems about it. I think the sun is a flower that blooms for just 1 hour. That was Margot's poem, read in a quiet voice in the still classroom while the rain was falling outside. Oh, you didn't write that, protested one of the boys. I did, said Margot. I did. So I thought that this was really important because it sets up like the jealousy that exists between Margot and her classmates, especially because they get to hear about how wonderful the sun is. Like a flower and it's how it blooms, but they've had to deal with being like in miserable weather their whole lives, and they're really jealous that Margot has experienced the sun and this happiness before.
Yeah, I remember other parts around that where she was describing the sun as a penny and they kept telling her like, no, you don't remember that. You don't remember that. Right. So it seems like they didn't want to hear what she's experienced because it was just like too emotional for them or upsetting for them.
That's a really good point, Mandy. So I picked another passage, and it says, this is another classmate, William, and he says, what are you looking at? Margot said nothing. Speak when you're spoken to. He gave her a shove, but she did not move. Rather, she let herself be moved only by him and nothing else. They edged away from her. They would not look at her. She felt them go away. And this was because she would play no games with them in the echoing tunnels of the underground city. If they tagged her and ran, she stood blinking after them and did not follow. When the class sang songs about happiness and life and games, her lips barely moved. Only when they sang about the sun and the summer did her lips move as she watched the drenched windows. And so I picked this part of the text because I think it really helps us understand Margot's character and like the psychological effects that these relationships are having on her, and this jealousy and this move is having on her.
It really sounds like she's struggling before getting locked in the closet.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think she described herself a lot just as like quiet and just like separate from the other kids.
And that seems to me to be the logical reason why she's not playing with the other kids, because she's still missing her life on Earth, and she's struggling to get over the fact that she's on Venus now.
Yeah, well, I did a little bit of research, like thinking about what you were just saying, Brenton, about how like what is Venus actually like? I was really curious, like, does it actually rain on Venus? Could humans actually live there? And it turns out that like the author took a lot of liberties in writing the story. Like Venus is not habitable by humans. So if you look at my research there, and there's the website in case you want to read more. But it does not rain all the time. It's the hottest planet in the solar system with an average temp of 863 degrees Fahrenheit. It rotates much slower than on Earth. So one day on Venus takes longer than an entire year on Earth. So if you think about it, like it is literally dark for like 6 months and then light for 6 months. So like really that would be like the main issue. If people could live on Venus, that they would be in the dark all the time, or they would never have darkness to be able to sleep. Um, so like Margot being in the closet for that hour, in Venus time, that would have been 15 days on Earth, which is kind of crazy to think about.
That's so interesting. That really makes me wonder, like kind of getting into the discussion questions, like why would the author choose to place this story on Venus if that's not how Venus is? Like, why not pick a different planet? Why take these liberties and make the weather on Venus something that it's not? And so if we want to scroll down to the discussion questions and responses. So I came up with 4 different questions. My first one that I just want to hear your thoughts on is like, how do you think Margot feels about being on Venus? And I'm kind of going to lump in like, what would life be like if it rained all day?
So I can respond to that one. I think it's pretty clear from the story that Margot does not like being on Venus. She misses the sun, she misses her friends, and she misses life on Earth. And, you know, I think about extrapolating that out to how I would feel being on a place, on a planet where it rained all year long, every day, all day long. Like that would be a fairly miserable place to live for somebody like me who likes to be outdoors. So that was something I was thinking about as we were reading that part of the text.
Yeah, I think too, like, oh, was someone supposed to type the answers to this one? Who wants to be the typer? Oh, thanks so much, Emily. Appreciate that.
Perfect. Thanks, Emily.
So like in thinking about like her being on Venus, like I know on the second page in the first column, like that's where that kid William is really picking on her. And like he says things like, what are you looking at? Speak when you're spoken to. So clearly they're like she's being treated also just like she is not equal to their other students. Like she's not allowed to talk without other people talking to her, according to some of these kids. And so I would assume that she's really struggling with that. And I think that we see that and how they kind of target her.
Miss Williams, to build on what you were saying there about her feeling like an outcast, when I think about this story, I think it's a good metaphor for how kids can sometimes treat other kids that come from different places or have different attributes to their personality or background that are unfamiliar. So it's a terrific metaphor of the lasting impact those kind of behaviors can have on somebody.
Yeah. So another question, those were all great ideas. I wrote down what I could. What do you think happens after the story ends? Because we just see it kind of ends on a cliffhanger. So what were you guys predicting?
Yeah, when I see like, I kind of get the vibe when I read the end of the text that like the kids actually feel kind of bad, right? Like one of the girls is like, well, no one's moving, and then she go on. And so they're all like slowly going down there, slowly opening the door, right? Like I kind of wonder, like, I want to be hopeful and hope that like maybe they realize that what they did was like really, really terrible. And like maybe it changes how they treat Margot. And just some of their actions, again, like them describing how slow they walked. It said like at the very end there, it says like their faces were solemn and pale, right? They look at their hands and feet, their faces down. So that's all telling me like they feel pretty bad, right? About, or at least some of them do feel pretty bad about what had happened. So
Miss Williams,
I'm hopeful.
you've raised an incredible point there, looking at how the story ends for the kids that locked Margot in the closet. But I think about what happened to Margot after the story ends. Margot has been traumatized by this, no question about it, feeling isolated, feeling picked on, not to mention the fact she was already missing the sun. So she's probably feeling a whole different type of way after that. And I think to myself, you know, it's probably going to be a long time before she's able to deal with all of those negative emotions that she's probably feeling.
Yeah. Didn't the text say too at one point that they were thinking about going back to Earth? Am I remembering that right? Yeah. Like, man, I guess maybe that would maybe be like the nail in that coffin. You know what I mean? Like now they are for sure going back. Like she can't stand it anymore. She's leaving, right? She cannot handle this anymore, which I think that's exactly how I would feel.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you. So do you guys think that this is a forgivable act? I kind of feel like what Mandy said about them appearing to feel kind of guilty, that maybe it is, but what do you guys think?
It's tough to say. I think when I think about the responsibility in this story, the responsibility lies first and foremost with the teacher. Where was the
I was
teacher?
thinking that
You
too.
know, this poor kid's locked in a closet while everyone else is outside playing. The teacher should probably do a head count at some point. But that's just my teacher voice speaking there. I also think about the kids, like they didn't mean to lock her in for the whole hour. Like they were just kind of messing with her, and then they forgot because they were kind of in the throes of playing in the sun. So, you know, if Margot can understand that, then I think she would have an easier time forgiving these kids.
I think that's a theme I didn't really think about until this conversation, was just like this idea that, like, you know, small actions without thinking about it can have like really big consequences, right? That's really interesting.
Well, the last part of our show today is the visualizer. And so I picked this painting here, which is a really interesting one. The painting, was thinking about the story, and one part that stuck with me was the jealousy of the kids, because that's what really prompted them to treat Margot differently. And so I Googled jealousy and art, and this was one of the first paintings that came up. This is the painting Jealousy. It's titled Jealousy, and it's by the Norwegian artist Edvard Munch. And in it, you can see this guy at the front of the painting who appears to be kind of feeling very jealous about this couple in the back that have a romantic relationship. And it's got the color green in it, which, I don't know if you've heard the saying green with envy, but it really captures this idea of wanting something you can't have or you don't have, which is really what jealousy is all about. And so I saw a connection between the theme in this painting and the theme in this story that we read.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I just think like the image of him being isolated, I agree with you, like just really sets apart that like jealousy, can happen both ways. Like in the book, the kids were jealous as a group of one other person, but in this painting, it's kind of the opposite. It's one person being jealous of the group,
That's a good point, Mandy. Thanks for sharing your what you guys all found today. I'm really excited to read the next passage and have another discussion tomorrow.
This
Same.
was super awesome, guys. Great job.
All right.